Hello, welcome to the MPTS Virtual Festival. Very excited to have my guests here today. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sadie Groom. I'm the Managing Director of Bubble Agency and the founder of RISE, the Association for Women in Broadcast. I get the session on Strictly, which I'm very excited about, and also being a huge graphics fan with my background working for Softimage. So this is really exciting for me. Before I'll introduce my guests. So we have David Newton, who's the founder and MD of Potion Pictures. We also have Joe Phillips, who's a senior designer at Potion Pictures as well, and it's his birthday today, so I am going to mention that. But talking of things that bring us joy, Strictly last year was amazing. I mean, you know, especially in the circumstances, I think it really brought massive amounts of joy to the nation on all levels. And the level of graphics it just seemed to be, you know, a totally different ball game. So what we're going to do is have a quick look at a show reel of the graphics, and particularly the AR element, which we're going to be discussing today. So Julie, if we can play the video, that'd be great. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, your 2020 Strictly Come Dancing finalists. Phil. Harvey. Jamie.
Wow. Yeah, and I didn't get to see all of Strictly this year, but I think even if you're, you know, even if you're not a Strictly fan and you're just a graphics fan, then, you know, I think that's huge. So so over to you, David. First, could you just tell us a bit about Potion Pictures and the pocket-sized history of projects that you've worked on, please?
So we've been a company for 12 years. I started as a freelancer, doing theatre and doing television, and set up in sort of 2009, and we've just very slowly sort of built up over those years, with the shows that we've worked on. So Strictly is something that we've been involved with since 2010, and as that show has gotten bigger and used more and more graphics, we've done more as a company. We do lots of different types of graphics, as well as live performance visuals. We do title sequences, we do visual effects, and all those sort of disciplines sort of all kind of sort of work together. There's a lot of sort of synergy in the different types of work that we do that are really useful on the sort of big entertainment shows.
And how did you get involved with Strictly?
I was freelancing, and I sort of came in at a sort of a last minute in 2010 to cover a couple of shows. I think it's a maternity cover, and the company that were doing graphics, and this was very early days on Strictly, and in terms of graphics, they'd only just started hiring a graphic designer. So we only worked 2 days a week, which was the rehearsal day and the record day. So there's no such thing as prep days. You would
But it's a
turn
bit
up
different
and
now.
yeah, absolutely. There's multiple designers. There's concept docs where it used to be turn up, listen to the music, look at the rehearsal, and do whatever you could within the time, which was often very simple. But I think quite quickly it started to snowball, because producers realised that they could get what they asked for, and if they wanted a cobblestone floor projected onto the dance floor, that could happen, and they didn't have to rely on a library content that was always going to be limited.
Cool. I mean, we're going to talk a bit more now about the 2020 series. And I know we're going to share a video which we're going to talk over as well. But what was the general brief? And I think one of the questions that I've got was, was the brief very different from previous years? And did they really want to accelerate the graphics?
Well, I mean, like I said, we've been involved since 2010, and I would say that every year has taken a step forward in some ways, and some years that's been a small step, adding an extra screen or increasing the resolution of the projector, or trying something new, adding stuff in post. So every year has taken a step forward, but obviously 2020 was a massive step forward, because we were introducing all this new technology. But in previous years, what we had done is done the sort of the false perspective in the floor projection. So it made it look like they were standing on top of a lighthouse or a skyscraper, and that had always been a really effective look. But it was always the big disadvantage is the camera couldn't move. And similarly, we'd done a few series where we'd done superimposed graphics, and that had worked on some of the group pre-records, because we had time in post to, for Harry Potter we added floating candles, but we had time in post to do that. But there were other ones as part of the live show, like we had a sort of a frozen castle sort of being built, similar to what we did in AR. But it was on a static shot, and on a show like multi-camera show like Strictly, the camera is always moving, and then you would go to this odd static shot and go, and here's the VFX. So we'd been talking a lot about adding camera tracking for quite a few years before 2020. So it was already at the back of sort of everybody's minds. But in 2020, obviously, with COVID and a need to reduce the sort of number of crew who could set these big set pieces that Strictly had sort of gotten used to, that came around, and AR was sort of seen as a potential way of doing big set pieces that kind of set up the story, but don't require 8 men to run in and construct it in a minute and a half VT.
Which would be very difficult. Okay, if we can show the video, and I know you're gonna two of you talk through it, I think that would be great. Thank you.
So the screens and the projection in the top left is what we've sort of always done. Top right is the sort of final composited footage. When we talk about AR, there's two types of AR. There's the bottom left, which is going into the floor, and then there's the bottom right screen, which is stuff that's being overlaid on top of the camera. So they're both using the same camera tracking technology, but they're coming from separate engines, and they're both relying on knowing where the camera is, and that's the crucial stage. That's really the thing that separates 2020 from ever years. So what this video doing is demonstrating the kind of previses that we make before we get into the studio, just to show how much prep work is sort of actually done to give the producers an idea.
How long does, I mean, Joe, how long does the previs take?
So the previs, so I build everything in sort of in Unreal in the set. So I have a sort of built to scale set inside the engine, which then shows me where I need to put stuff. So I know where the choreographers, where the dancers are going to be, and so I always have to plan for where I need. You know, I've got these little models of these people in a life size, so I can always plan around where they're going to be. So actually, you know, what you're seeing in that bottom right hand corner is just the sort of AR graphics in the sort of set, so they can get sort of scale positioning and that. And they don't take too long. You know, it really helps me to know. You know, they tell me, like, you sort of get messages from the dancers or the choreographers, and they sort of say, this is what we're planning to do, this is where we want them to be, this is where we want the graphics to be. And it makes it really easy then, because they just sort of say, here's a grid, that's where we want them to be. And it doesn't take too long. It's actually fine, yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else on the video you want to go back to, David?
No, I mean, it was very quick, and you suddenly realise actually how much there is to explain. I think, you know, one of the things that you might have spotted there is although it's fairly close to the final RX footage, there's still changes that Joe is making while we're in rehearsals. Once we see everything coming together and seeing the exact choreography, you know, one of my favorite bits of the series was with the chickens, and we realized that Karen Hauer's choreography meant that she was standing on the chicken. So Joe redid it and made the chickens run away when Karen got too close.
Very clever.
And that wouldn't have happened, you know, in a situation where we have to pre-render everything. That's only possible because we're doing stuff in real time now, and also, you know, working on site with such a sort of a close team really sort of enables us to kind of make those changes as we go.
Yeah, what's the sort of team structure you're working with? I mean, you know, how involved do you get, you know, to know the choreography, and, you know, how does that work in terms of your team, and how much of it is on site and how much of it is back at motion pictures at home?
Yeah.
Let's say during COVID.
So with the AR side of things, we would have a meeting with the producers on sort of the rehearsal days of the previous week, so they would be able to sort of give us their ideas quite early on of what they want to plan to do, and have guest choreographers that would come in, or if they didn't have guest choreographers, it would be, you know, the dance professional that would be giving us sort of direction and that. And they would do, like, we'd have like director's takes which would show us what they would want to do, and they would explain, you know, we want say we want an elephant here, or we want a plant here, and we want this to work here, and that was quite helpful to hear what they wanted to happen. And, you know, we'd build as much as we can from sort of the Monday to the Wednesday, and then I would be on site on the Thursday with the Moses team, which are the team that do the tracking cameras and stuff. And, you know, we'd have to do a lot of calibration and relight stuff to work. And, you know, on that day as well, we had Dave Bishop and his lighting team there, which would also be able to sort of help us, because there's a lot of things that, you know, this AR only sort of works well when your whole team works well. You know, you've got so many sort of layers of people that need to sort of, you know, you can't have lights that will be crossing it because it will look like it's floating. You can't have people walking in front of it because they'll go behind it. You know, there's all these things that you sort of have to make sure that everyone's sort of on terms with. And, you know, it's hard because no one can actually see it on set. So especially for dancers, we have to really make sure that we are avoiding them, because they can, you know, they are dance professionals, but they're not dancing professionals. Sometimes they can just go that little bit off, and you kind of have to make sure you have a little bit of a leeway to make sure that they don't sort of cross
it or fall over. More importantly, a bit about the technology. You've already mentioned Moses. What's the rest of the technical setup? What are the products,
so we
software are you using?
So we work in, for the AR stuff that we make is done in the Unreal Engine, which is a live game system engine. And then what happens is we have Moses, which is a tracking team, which they work with a star tracker which goes onto the camera, and the star tracker sort of reads the reflective panels around the set, so it can give me a live position of the tracked camera, so that whenever the camera moves, it moves in my scene, it tracks where the position of the said object is, you know, and it makes sure that it sticks to the floor as best it possibly can. We had two cameras. We had the Crane and the Steadicam, both with star trackers. You know, one was a wireless setup system and one was a sort of wired system. So the Crane was the one that was always used for stuff that was quite big and quite heavy, and then you'd have, you know, the Steadicam was able to sort of run through things. You know, he had to cross the road sometimes and had to avoid an elephant, you know, things like that. It was his job to sort of, he could see it on his little camera, and sometimes he had to sort of, you know, move around it. And, you know, it happens sometimes, like he walked through things and you just had to say, oh, and then he knew he'd done it once, didn't do it again. And that's sort of, you know, it was a good thing, because the guy, everyone was sort of able to, you know, help and make it work. It was difficult, you know, for everyone to sort of readapt, and, you know, we had to put delays in for sound and stuff, and, you know, sound had to then do some technical changes, and the directors had to change, you know, headsets and stuff so they could listen to the delay sound. So there was a lot that had to change on such a well-run show, and you sort of bringing in this new technology, it actually changed quite a lot of the show that was already there. And, you know, for everyone to sort of adapt their way of working to make it work, it was really a team effort from everyone that sort of made it work.
I mean, what have you learned? Have you learned things for next year?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, yeah.
I think we learn something every week, and you implemented something new every week that improved the process, improved the look. So yeah, and sorry, Jay, So every week, you know, we was pushing this engine. So it was something that sort of hadn't been done at that level in live show before. So we sort of had to keep, you know, chasing tail, making sure we was making it better every week. You know, every single week we was like, let's push it, let's see what else we can get from this. You know, add in reflection floors, shadows, you know, tracked shadows, things like that. It was all let's see what else we can get out of it. And we've got so much more now that we want to push and do more with. It was just always what's possible, what works, what doesn't.
Yeah. And I think it really obviously showed, you know, for the audience, it seemed very seamless for the audience, and obviously they wouldn't have known that any of this was happening. The magic. Just a quick question about COVID. Apart from when can I go to the pub? Did this cause any significant issues for you? And, you know, if so, how did you overcome it?
So, I mean, not significant. I mean, it sort of, we had limited team numbers. You know, we sort of had to be one person. So, you know, we had one Moses engineer that was inside, you know, watching the tracking, one that was on the floor watching the cameras, and then there was myself doing the engine sort of design, and then Dave would be doing the design. So we'd had to make sure that we was very, you know, apart from each other, and, you know, and there was only a limited amount of people there. I think if this was not in COVID, we would have had probably more people there, more designers there, sort of always just, you know, making sure things were working at 100%. But, you know, we worked around it, and I think, you know, we did the best we could with the sort of the limitations that were there.
Yeah, they were there. So we've got some questions from the audience before I come to sort of some final questions. So actually you talked about bumping into things, and somebody has asked about did you have This from Doug Smith. Was there anything on set as a placeholder for the elements? Was there anybody in a green screen elephant costume?
No. So, so basically, the dancers were shown what they would be having on screen and stuff, and there were monitors in studio to sort of have a look at to see where things were. Also, we had a grid on the floor which told them whereabouts it would be. But you know, as always, when a director starts to shoot, it does change the sort of perspective of where they are. So if there ever was a point, the director would try her best to sort of make sure that they weren't in shot, and she did, like, you know, they did a very good job of making sure that that never happened. And if it did need to happen, we would just ask the professional if it was okay to finish a little bit more further downstage or upstage, and they, you know, they would make it work, or in turn we would move it and just make sure that they didn't hit it, because we could just move it out of the way.
Yeah. Okay. Another question from the audience from Jane Haywood. Are you modeling from scratch, or are you using pre-built assets, or is it a mix?
It's very much a mix. We build a lot of bits and pieces, but you know, sometimes with the short amount of turnaround and the amount of stuff that needs to sort of go on screen, we do use, you know, sort of some bulk models and stuff, and we sort of readapt those and make sure that they can work in our sort of world. But you know, there was a good marketplace of stuff that was able to sort of readapt, rechange textures, light, and things like that. So yeah, it's a mix, real mix.
And for that mix, are you getting, I mean, how much of it is your input as well? So, you know, is it, you know, obviously we saw the images of the animals and the crocodiles and things like that. You know, did the production team say to you, we want a crocodile and an elephant, or was it, well, actually, do you know what, we think this would look really cool?
No, mostly come from production. You know, some things, I mean, Bill Bailey himself asked for some bits. You know, he wanted like the guitar, he wanted the type of guitar that he had himself. You know, the animals, they asked for the animals, you know, especially the animals themselves. They're sort of things that were sort of modeled and then readapted or relit and changed the textures to work for how they want it to be. But you know, they would ask, and we would see what we can, and if we couldn't get what they wanted, we'd make it, or if we didn't have the time, we'd see if there was a compromise. But yeah, everyone was sort of very good going.
There was nothing, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, there was nothing that we ever said no to.
No,
the series, and we said at the sort of beginning, you know, we did a demo day where we showcased some things that you could do to try and give them ideas of what would work, because it was new for everybody. But what we didn't want to do is sort of lead them down a route of just doing stuff that we knew was going to work. You know, the exciting thing is fitting into the kind of the creative that ties into everything else that they want to achieve. So, you know, I think everything we did was led by the creative concept rather than being led purely by what the technology can do.
Right, which is hopefully what it should be. Another couple of questions. How much time did you have between previs and testing things on the studio floor?
So very short turnaround. So, you know, we would spend sort of Monday, Tuesday. Well, I would spend Monday, Tuesday, sort of Wednesday working on the design and sort of working with the producers to get the looks in the previs and get those signed off. Thursday, I would go in on site with just the Moses team and the lighting team, and we'd make sure that we matched, you know, that Tom and Dave Bishop would be lighting the numbers. So I'd be getting sort of color references from them, and I'd be lighting it then. And we go into a really rigorous Friday, which is non-stop back-to-back dances, which is no stopping, no waiting. And you get through it really quickly, and then, you know, Saturday's the show. So it's really quick turnaround, really quick.
Wow, that is super quick. Another question: how well does Unreal Engine deal with fields and the A-listing?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we had issues very, very early on with anti-aliasing. You know, the temporary A-listing is something that Unreal Engine is sort of working on, and in AR, you know, it's quite an expensive trait to have. So we had to sort of find workarounds. We worked with the people at Unreal and the team at Moses to see the best ways that we could get around it. You know, we had to bring in post-processing effects to be able to deal with anti-aliasing, and then we just had to design around it, because, you know, some very high detailed thin chrome lines were going to always pick up anti-aliasing. So, you know, we just had to use the best design processes to sort of get through it.
And I think one of the really difficult things about it was we wouldn't know until we were on camera whether a particular model was going to suffer from this. So, we could do the previous and be like, oh, this looks absolutely terrific. But then on camera, this very sort of frustrating technical glitch would sort of appear. And as Joe says, he's then working around it to in lots of different ways to try and make it work.
Yeah, so somebody's asked what kind of tech specs for the Unreal computer, particularly graphics RAM.
Yes, so we had one machine per camera, and then one machine for the floor. So we had 3 actual big machines in total to run the Unreal in each one. So they were running Titan cards in both. I'm not massively sure on the RAM. Dave, have you got any idea of the RAM?
I'm pretty sure it's 128.
128, yeah.
Oh no, mine is 64.
We was running very, very big machines independently on each, on each camera. So they were very good. We never had any limitations. We pushed it a lot. Particles and smoke and things like that. We didn't have. We had a hurdle once with fireworks, but that was when I fired off over 400 at once by accident. So I think, that was about it.
I mean, is there, thinking of the future, is there more technology you need? Can the technical audience here provide you with something that can make your job easier, better, or the creative more stunning?
I mean, the more technology, the better. The faster the machines for real time. The more redundancy we have, the better it will be. I think we're going to start using more of the real time stuff for everything. I think you really are seeing like a change in the way that animation and rendering in particularly works. There won't be this, especially for live events. We're always saying to clients like, please can we have changes the night before, so that we can have a chance of rendering and re-encoding in time, and eventually that will change so that we can make changes on the fly and work closer and closer with all sort of different departments to bring everything together for showtime.
Excellent. So finally, are you going to be back for next year, bigger and better? And is there anything that you can?
I mean, there's probably nothing we can tell you, but
no, you can tell.
I mean, obviously, like I said, the show is really good at incrementally improving, in all ways. But technically, every year it has advanced, and with graphics, it's always advanced, and there is so much more that we can do with real-time rendering and with AR and with the star tracker and the camera tracking technology. So we're hopeful that we're going to be doing more of this type of work, and hopefully on Strictly.
Yeah, and hopefully not replacing.
No, and I mean, I do think that's a sort of a key thing, and I think one of the nice things about working on the show is that it's always been about the dancing, and everything else is the sort of the entertainment, sparkly packaging. But with the way that all the technology has been slowly introduced over the years, to me it never feels like it's sort of overwhelmed what's going on and where the focus is. And we particularly used AR in such a way that it was often used to set up the performance, set up the narrative that they're kind of garden gnomes, or that they're their characters from Frozen, and then there's not AR for the sequence. So it's these fantastic kind of technical kind of setups, and then it's dancing.
and that's the focus, which is the right way. Thank you so much, David and Joe from Potion Pictures. That was super interesting. And yeah, Joe,
Thank you.
happy
Thank you,
birthday again. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing your great work later on this year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers then. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.